Hey guys, welcome to episode 140. Today's episode is all about the power of the design sprint and how it's used to shape game design and assist in playtesting for game designers, including my guests from Grodd Games and their trilogy of games they're working on right now. Now, if you're not familiar, as I was not, a design sprint is like a creative rocket booster originally developed by Google Ventures. It's a fast 5-day process to take a challenge, generate solutions, make decisions, and build a prototype you can actually test. It's all about speed, clarity, and bold experimentation. Our guest today took that same framework and applied it to board game design instead of spending months stuck in development cycles. They used a sprint to move their second game from concept to prototype and right into the hands of playtesters. This conversation is all about how that process worked or is working, what was discovered along the way, and how sprinting through design has changed the way that a game comes to life. And joining me today is Devon from Grodd Games. Devon, how are you, man? Welcome.
Thank you, PJ. Excited to be here, and I am doing well. We were actually just chatting a little bit before we started the show. Currently on a road trip
Yep.
and exploring the country. So always got to start sort of like where in the world is Devon and Catherine from Grodd Games, and we are in Bend right now for the recording. I can't promise where we'll be next on a future chat, but heading down the California coast over the next few weeks. So we're very excited. But design
This
sprints,
is great. Yes. This is kind of cool because
right?
real quick, just to catch everybody up. So Catherine, your partner from Grodd Games and partner in real life, she was on the show in episode 99. Guys, that was the last audio only episode before we launched YouTube and started recording video. So here we are 40 episodes later, and now you're on for the first time. I'm sorry it's taken this long to get you on, but yeah,
Life is
thanks
busy.
for it is busy.
I'm
You're
excited.
definitely right about that. So before we dive into design sprints, do you want to catch us up on the status of Estate, Raise the Realm, the first
Yeah.
game in your trilogy?
Yes. So we have our first game in the trilogy coming to market. It is actually in production right now in China. So we were chatting with basically our project manager at the factory, and they are actively printing the game. So we're really excited about that.
It's good
And
news.
in a few weeks, we'll actually send someone out to China to check on the production, basically QA it before all of the print is done. So that's exciting that we actually have someone that's able to go out there. We did not anticipate that, but I have a family member who was like, "Oh, I'm going to China in 2 weeks for business," and they happen to be going to the same city as the factory. It's like, yes, please go check this out for us.
That's convenient.
Yes, so that was huge. Slight delay in the timeline that we wanted for the Kickstarter. We had to do 2 more proofs than we wanted, so backers will probably be getting it. Fingers crossed, like end of the year, but most likely January, and then we'll be releasing it to the broader public later in Q1 of next year.
How has the tariff situation, like, what is that going to look like for your backers? Like, how much of a burden will be placed on your backers once it ships over here?
It's hard to tell. I think there's been some situations where folks have used tariffs to, in some cases, indiscriminately raise prices. In other cases, they said, "Hey, do you want to volunteer and throw a couple bucks? And here's a rough estimate of our expectation." But with the way tariffs have swung from, like, I think at one point it was 30%, another time it was 70%. I think at one point it was like 150%. So it's really hard to have any like consistent messaging around what we we've talked a lot about it, but Catherine mostly has been the deciding factor on that. And I'd say we've settled towards this idea of, if it's under a certain percent, we're probably going to absorb it.
Okay.
And if it goes above that threshold, we'll probably do some sliding scale and just communicate like, "Hey, we are paying this much per game in tariffs. If you would like to, as a backer, support us and you want to pay that tariff, you can, but keeping it optional. We did do some other things on the back end, like we explored different manufacturers and things of that nature to sort of absorb cost in other ways. So that's been helpful as well, where we decided to get a little bit creative. We also produced a little bit more volume to bring down our production costs, but then obviously
good.
up
Yeah.
front, you've got more capital costs from the tariff. So just any lever we could move, we explored moving, and by we I really mean on that front, which she did a fantastic job. So
What kind of support? What kind of support have you received from other designers, other publishers, and just manufacturers trying to help you navigate all this?
Yeah, we chatted with quite a few different manufacturers, especially once tariffs got up to that 150% mark, and that was sort of a big grimace. Not really sure what we're gonna do,
Right.
and I really hope this changes, and thankfully it did. So just that was tough, and then also our game is not the game one. It has a lot of if you've seen it before, the player mats
Yep.
have this nice indentation to them, and it's got these pieces that are glued together, and that from a labor cost perspective is just not really feasible in the US right now. So that's one of the reasons why we're in China. We did get some quotes from European manufacturers that have some tooling where they can sort of do that a little bit more affordably than the shipping rates from Europe at the time. We were just like, that doesn't really make sense either.
Yeah.
Other designers, we've gotten very creative in terms of how we approach design. Didn't really think about this component or this material cost so much with game one. It's definitely something that we're looking at a lot more closely in game two, because there are some components that are, I would say, are very, there are a lot of manufacturers for in the US. Example, cards. There are lots of card manufacturers. So you might see in the market, like now and in the next 6 to 12 months, a lot of small box card games. And that's because that's something very easy to domestically produce, or very easy to produce, especially if it's a small set card game. You can probably produce it a lot more affordably, and then you have much lower tariffs. So,
that's interesting. I've noticed not so much small box card games, although I'm sure that's true too. What I've noticed recently is these small box card expansions to games that already exist. And I had not even considered the current tariff situation as a motivating factor and why it's just a card expansion.
yeah. And the
That's interesting.
one thing we did do from a design perspective, and actually I think it added value to the game, which we had in essence, in the center of our game board, there were a set of cards that are like action spaces that change. So when you set up the game, there are some game board actions. There's a handful of them that change from game to game. And initially those were cards, and it was a separate size card. So it wasn't our standard card size. And that component added quite a bit of cost. And we had extra space on some of our punch boards. So we ended up using that extra space on the punch board, redesigning it into this really nice like punch board tile. And that didn't add any cost, which was fantastic, where we were able to
that's cool.
Eliminate, the component still exists, but in a new form factor, and we happen to have the material that it could sit on. So that was pretty cool.
Because that's like, if I recall, and the version I saw, I play tested this, a year ago, and so I'm sure it's evolved. So that was like was it 4 events? There was 4. It's like in the very center, there was like a column of 4, and those are now cardboard tiles instead of card. I love that. That's
very
that's awesome. That's awesome. It's really interesting. You described some of your efforts with managing the components and the manufacturing as creative solutions. And that's why we're talking today, right? Is you've gotten really creative recently, and we're going to talk about design sprints, which was a totally new concept to me. And if I understand, just doing some research with Google Ventures, the whole plan is it's just to tackle a particular challenge, right? Or a problem. It's a way to attack a problem, right? That results in a prototype. And you took this system and applied it to game design. I hope I explained that accurately in my introduction.
Yeah, at a high level, I think you captured it. It's as a framework, it's designed to build a solution to a problem,
Okay.
which as board game designers, I'm sure sometimes designers are coming at game design with a problem. I played
Right.
this game. I want to make a different game and solve this problem that this game has. I hear that from a lot of designers, and I think that that's a valid approach. I'm sure there's also lots of other different frameworks out there, and I just wanted to give a shout out to the Tabletop Game Designer Association. They have a ton of resources as a
Yes.
game design for game design, so you can take a look at that. But focusing on the design sprint for game one, this wasn't something that we could use. We were just kind of let's build a game. We want to build a game, but we didn't necessarily have
Right.
a problem we're solving. For game two, since we're sort of keeping this thematic, narrative journey going, we had gotten feedback on game one. There's a handful right now. I think we've got like maybe 35 ratings on Board Game Geek, and I love them. I love when people actually like leave comments and
Right.
critical feedback. And there were a handful of comments that just stood out to me. And I was like, like this is really good feedback, and this could be perceived as a problem with our game. Some of them we designed the game intentionally that way. So let's talk about day one. So there's 5 days to a design sprint. Day one
Okay.
is all about understanding the problem. So I collated that feedback that we've gotten on game one. As an example, one piece was we have a massive deck. So I think we've got at a 150.
Yeah.
So some players don't like the card randomness, which actually we got some great feedback from a gentleman, Mo, over at Tabletop Bellhop. He's like, why don't you add a drafting mechanic at the start of the game? So this is early when we were play testing and sort of had our first like sample copy that we could send out. We sent one to him and got his feedback, and that was fantastic to get that, because by adding that card drafting mechanic, we solved some of that randomness for game one. It was also designed intentionally to have that large deck. I wanted people to have multiple times where they're going to explore the deck and find new cards from game to game. But I also wanted to have a unique strategy where players could mine the deck for cards, where now that you know the deck, there is one leader, like one faction, one player map that does really good at drawing cards. So you could intentionally mine the deck for certain cards. So that the massive deck was a intentional design of game one, but it is a problem going into game two, especially because
Okay.
we want to make more card design. We want to have new effects. We can't add more cards. If we, I did a mini expansion for game one, like an interactive deck, and we're just adding more cards to an already very large deck. So that's one problem that we're trying to solve for.
So, real
Okay.
quick, just to
Yeah.
contextualize for those who maybe don't know. So you're talking about not an expansion to a state. You are talking when you say game 2, you're talking about a completely different game, and I believe your plan is to make a trilogy of games.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. Just
And those
just
games are.
wanted to contextualize that a little bit.
Yeah, I think when some people hear we're doing a trilogy, they think that these games will like cohesively mesh in the
Yeah.
sense that you could sit down with all three boxes and play one giant game. But really, they are three distinct
3
games that are
distinct
going to
games.
tell a narrative story.
So, in your mind's eye, do you envision gamers, once all 3 games are published, maybe on a long Saturday playing all 3 of them in succession rather than one big giant?
I intend to host tournaments where
Okay.
you are doing the estate journey of, there's the game one tournament, there's the game two tournament, and the game three tournament. And then you have, a point ranking based on how you did individually for an
Okay.
overall winner across all three. So I love that.
Okay.
And I think, yes, very possible.
Okay. So you've tackled the first problem of the massive deck from game 1 that's not going to be sufficient in game 2.
Yep. So that's one problem we've identified. Another problem that we have coming out of our sort of our day one of which maybe just taking a step back.
Sure.
5 days, day one, all about understanding what are the problems you're trying to solve. And then day two is really about sketching concepts, sort of how many different solutions can you come up with for those problems. And then day three is making a decision on what you want to move forward with and prototype. And then day four is all about doing that prototyping. And then finally, day five, you're doing that play testing.
Okay.
And I would say as much as I would like to take 5 days off and do a full week of just game design and do this design sprint,
You
I
don't?
just I don't have the time to do that. So we have been breaking it up over a series of weekends. So we've
Okay.
done days 1, 2, and 3, and we're currently in day 4, and we're going to be
Okay.
wrapping up day 4 this weekend. So 2 weekends ago, we were in day 3 as an example. So deciding, so I had done the sketching of game 2, and it's on basically index cards that I've cut to different shapes and sizes and laid them out, and basically laid it out in front of Catherine, and we talked through, this is the various decisions that we made based on the problems we had. What do you think? Or, decisions I made based on the problems we had. What do you think?
Right.
And literally, she found a way. I had a game board concept, and it went from, 3 times the size to 1/3. It's now 1/3 the size. It's just, great feedback. And that's why next week we got to start play testing it to get more of that going. But focusing back, understanding that problem, I mentioned the massive depth. We did have a couple other problems that we were trying to solve. So another problem we had is time per player. So a lot of games will say, oh, it's 60 to 75 minutes, but you play at max player count, and all of a sudden it's a 120-minute game.
Yep.
So you're familiar.
Oh yeah. I have fallen prey to that unmistakable deceit on the side of the box.
So we say our game is about 15 to 20 minutes per player. And that's one thing that I find as a problem where, okay, we're going to add another player. We know this game's going to get 20 minutes longer. So I treated that as a problem. I don't want, I want our games to be, somewhere that in that sweet spot of that like 45 to 60 minute where it's not too long, not going to take up your whole afternoon, and then you can go and play another game. So right now, the first game was, but I was really concerned about game 2, and we want to get a higher player count for game 2. So game 1 goes up to 5. Game 2 is a game that's going to be designed more for like 5 to 8. It can go down to 2-player, but I'm designing it so that, I'm encouraging it for those nights where you want a strategy game, but you've got too many people and you don't want to split up into groups.
Yeah.
So time per player was a concern where, okay, if we're going to have an 8-player game and it's 20 minutes per player, that's too much. So that's
a long time.
Yep. And then the third thing we got, and this also came from feedback off BGG, that someone left a rating. In game 1, there's some random single round objectives, which they're not quite random. In essence, every round of the game, you introduce some effect.
Right.
And it could be positive, it could be negative, and an objective that players will compete over. But as a result of that, players don't know the objectives until the start of each round. So that was sort of a third problem where, there is a lot of randomness, and I did that to create variance in game to game.
Sure.
But there are ways to make randomness where maybe you can create randomness through asymmetric information. So one player can make a change to the game board. Maybe you're changing out this event. So this player knows the information. And I find that creates an interesting variance. So that's something we're exploring with game 2 as well. So that's understanding the problem. So we sort of came at it with those 3.
Okay.
And then we started generating solutions. So I'm curious, and I probably already talked to you a little bit about this, but time per player, how do you think we're solving that one?
I have no idea. I know that when I play tested Estate, it was originally 4 players, and you had a special rule for a 5th because I requested a 5th.
Yeah.
And it took forever.
Yep.
I'm not sure how you're going to, and then you're going to have 8 players. How are you going to solve the mystery of 8 players and the length of time? I don't know, but I'm hoping you're about to tell me.
Yep. Oh, yeah, of course. Simultaneous turns. I'm so excited about that. So we've been playing a lot of simultaneous turn-taking games. Planet Unknown, 7 Wonders, even like Captain Sonar, as an example. That's another, but that's a team-based simultaneous turn-taking game. So using those as sort of the basis where every player is going to be taking their turn at the same time. So that's one of our solution sets for that problem. And I'm very excited with how that's turning out.
Okay.
And then I'll say the factions are no longer playing against one another. It is a team-based faction. So you'll have, in a 4v4, you'll have 4 factions on each team. And then the teams are collectively taking that action together, which I'm very excited about. So that's
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
That's interesting. I don't know how I'm
They
going to find 8 people to get to my table.
wait, so you can. I am designing it for 4 players and two
Okay.
players. I haven't decided yet, and this is also because I'm in a 2-person household and we're traveling and camping
Hey,
together. I don't know how to do
so am I.
odd player,
Yeah,
so
that can be a problem.
that's an open-ended issue with the current version of the prototype that I have not
So
resolved yet.
I think I think there's no problem with having one team with one extra player. I'm thinking back to the first team game that I ever played in this hobby, and that was the Milton Bradley's Axis and Allies from the
Mm,
80s. You had 3 allies, you had 2 Axis countries, and it was a 3 versus 2 to play 5 players. So I think if you had 7 players, it's just going to be 3 on 4. Or if you have 5 players, it's going to be a 3 on 2. I think that's okay. Maybe three
yeah,
on two seems a little worse than a 4 on 3. I don't know. I guess it just depends. Yeah.
yeah, it's something I've been thinking about, and I think there is a way to scale it so that you can have that
Yeah.
odd player count. It's not so. Game one's a victory point based game. There's like 7 or 8 different ways to get victory points. Game two's an objective based game. So once a
Okay.
team reaches the required minimum count of objectives, they win the game over the other team. Sort of, they win the war. So in game
Oh,
one, you're rebuilding after the war. In
right.
game two, you are revisionists of history, playing through that war, and you have to meet the objectives. Manage your supply chain. Build out the right set of cards for your team to win that. Yeah. So where were we? My brain started extrapolating and thinking, visualizing the game.
I think we were on problem 3,
Step three,
step
yes.
3.
So yeah, deciding on what to move forward with. So I think we talked about one solution. So we talked about simultaneous turns for time per player. The
Right.
massive deck was another problem,
Yep.
and so we're doing faction-based decks, which
Okay.
that gives you a lot of flexibility to introduce more unique cards.
Mm-hmm.
You can also create some really interesting theming. So in game one, there's a standard farm. Every deck's going to have a farm, and
Okay.
now we have an opportunity to theme that farm to each of that the nuances of the different estates of a state, which I thought was pretty cool.
That is cool.
A great opportunity to leverage artists too, where I have this vision, don't know if it's actually going to happen, but to have an artist do each deck, so like a unique artist for each deck, and that way you kind of it'll just have like a really cool art vibe in that respect. But I digress. Let's get back to design sprints. The massive deck, faction-based decks, and then the random single round objectives. That's sort of being resolved by absorbing into this overarching set of objectives that the teams are competing for.
Right. Right.
So that's sort of what we decided on what to move forward with, and now we're in that prototyping phase of we have a game board, we have a set, basically a period of time that the teams run through. We know what actions they can take, and
Okay.
now I'm in the process of designing those decks. To start, I'm going to be doing a 4-player version for like 2 factions that her and I have been playtesting with, and I'm going to be trying to scale it up to 4. And then my hope is by Pets Unplugged, I will have 8 factions. I'm guessing I'll probably only have 4 at that point, though, just because it does take a lot of effort
Sure.
to come up with those and kind of balance them. So my dream scenario is to have sort of 2 sets of 4 factions for both sides, and then I can do two 4-persons and then group that up for an 8-person playtest. But that's the prototyping piece. Day 4, and then day 5 is all about playtesting. So we're sort of in that hybrid. We've prototyped a 2-person version. We need to scale it up and play test it some more.
So how does day 5, like, you're just one day of playtesting and then you just call it? Because that seems kind of short.
You're testing the concept, and then that's going to iterate into some sort of retrospective where,
Okay.
what did you like? What didn't you like? What are we going to change? And then that's when you start to go through that rapid phase of step 4 and 5. You're probably going to loop through those multiple times.
Okay.
But initially, as like a workshop, you could condense this if you really wanted to
Right.
into a day, like the design game jams. I like some of the game jams actually. They'll give you a kit of some set of components, and then you've got to design a game with this set of components. And that in and of
Mm.
itself is kind of a design constraint. It's a problem that you need to
Right.
work with. So you
Right.
can use that same framework there.
So ideally, you do this over 5 consecutive days to get to that playtest point that you just described. You're just spreading it out over several weeks due to everything that's going on.
And I would also recommend like maybe spreading it out too, because it gives you
Okay.
time to decompress and think about ideas that you've come up with.
So, but isn't the point of the sprint to do it quickly and not,
Yes.
right? So that seems counterintuitive to the framework of the design sprint.
Yeah, I would say if you're looking for that rapid deployment, you're going to want to do the 5 day back to back. And if you can, I mean, that's fantastic. And then I think if you go slower, I think you might sort of catch things where we have a sequence of actions that players are taking, and we have been fooling around with the distribution of like how those actions will appear in the game. I feel like I'm being really like vague and illusory, and I apologize.
It's fine.
And I think if I had gone in and just like done the 5 days, I would have had a version of it. But
Uh,
because I made the actions on the day 2, which was now, I think that was almost 4 weeks, 4 weeks ago, when we sat down for day 3, I had already had several thoughts and like feelings about those actions and revised them going into day 3. This is like it's sort of that concept of like, oh, you get a few nights to sleep on this,
sure.
which I do think can be beneficial. But also, if you're trying to get a game out there, that's the value of the design sprint, is that after a week, you can have a working prototype. And I do think it's a struggle for a lot of designers where, they're very one holding to their baby, they're sort of designing it on the side and giving yourself a framework to run through
Hmm.
and just sprint to the finish. So that way you can, bring something to show people and get feedback on.
Right.
That's
So step 5 is play testing. What does that look like? So one of the things that I have observed from a lot of designers who, they get caught up. This is their baby. They're doing it on the side. When they're playtesting, they end up playtesting in an echo chamber. Like their same 5, 10 friends at their local gaming group. And it's like, this game is great. Everyone loves it. And then you take it to a broader audience of playtesters, and it's like, and sometimes there's resistance to critical feedback. Other times they're grateful for it. They're like, wow, they're like, how did we not catch this? And I think it's because of that echo chamber. So how do you suggest to a designer planning on trying to go through a design sprint to tackle that 5th day of playtesting?
Yeah, I actually thought about that going into our own design sprint. And that is a problem where it's just the two of us doing this
Yeah.
playtesting initially for the 2-person version. And when we go up to the 4, it's still going to be the two of us. And it'll probably be the two of us for another month or two before we bring it to a broader audience. And one of the ideas that we had, which if we weren't so mobile, if we had been a little bit more stationary, is planning an intentional day 5 where we invite a bunch of folks from the broader community, like
Mm.
basically host a playtest jam or find a playtest jam to use as our day 5, which there are a lot of playtesting groups out there. I think like Proto Cleveland, they meet up, I want
Yep.
to say almost weekly, is it?
Wow.
So there's
I would love to get in with a regular meeting group of playtesters. That would be exciting. There is Protospiel in St. Louis. There's something else similar in Indianapolis, but again, those aren't always accessible. Yeah. So is PAX Unplugged going to be like we're taking it to a broader audience?
that's going to be our sort of like our public playground of we've got a group of folks that joined our Discord, so we're going to
Mm-hmm.
do a post there and say, hey, if you're at PAX Unplugged, we need 8 people, and ideally it's either 8 people we don't know, or there's a handful of playtesters that I've noticed do a really good job of asking like very poignant questions. So if I could target those And we just be like, hey, hey Joe, you do a great job. Really, I want you to play test the new version of the game. And some of them are super champions of Estate One, so I don't think it's a hard ask for them. They'll probably be
Sure.
very excited to play it. But similarly, they are super fans, so they're going to be
Yeah.
biased. So for PAX Unplugged, we still have some of that. I would say some of that audience bias, and we are not. In past PAX Unplugs, we've actually brought the game into forgetting the name of the organization, but they usually rent one of the rooms and have basically like a designer playtest space. Unpub.
Unpub. That was my
So
gonna.
yeah, so we've gone to Unpub the last 3 years, and part of the reason why we don't want to commit to that is because we want to have more time to enjoy PAX Unplugged. It's one of the few cons where we have a very large amount of friends that come to it. We are making more friends though, and now that's becoming more times. And basically, I want to play other games with other people. I
Sure.
don't want to just play test my game. And if I start signing up for Unpub time slots, I'm
Right.
gonna be like 8 hours a day. Let's go.
Right. I can see that. Yeah. Well, I mean, you and Catherine got to enjoy Gen Con this year, right?
Yes,
So
that was fantastic.
good, good. So that's because we got to squeeze in some time with you, so that was great. It was great to see you in a not professional setting. I don't know if is that how we refer to ourselves now?
I don't know. Our identities are so intermingled with
Mm,
what we pursue from a business endeavor standpoint.
it is so true, right? Yeah. A lot of ways, I feel like my person and the podcast are synonymous, and I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. That's not always the case, but yeah. So was that your first? Was that you and Catherine's first convention that you got to just enjoy, not playtesting?
In quite a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So it was probably been since maybe 2018, 2019, where all the conventions we've
Yeah.
gone to since about 2020 have been, exclusively to prioritize the game that we're building.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So I'm thankful. Gen Con was fantastic. So many good games were played, and it
That's
wasn't just my
good.
game. I
That's
love my
good.
game. Don't get me wrong.
Sure. Sure. I'm more excited about your apparel than I am your game.
Oh my gosh, we were at a restaurant the other day and they were selling Hawaiian T-shirts. I was like, we should make an estate Hawaiian T-shirt.
What? A state is not set on an. I mean, I guess you could, but I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I just love the estate T-shirts.
Yeah,
I
the
love.
current ones we have are.
Yeah, that burgundy is or whatever color is just beautiful. Beautiful color, beautiful font, and I love that. And I want one terribly. I'm a sucker for swag, man. I'm just, you know,
Noted. I'm writing it down.
yeah. You got to
DJ
think of
loves swag.
swag. Oh yeah, absolutely. I am crazy for it. So yeah, so PAX Unplugged, you're gonna expose the game to a broader audience, but it's gonna be kind of in an unofficial capacity. So the people who will get to playtest game 2, they already know they're gonna get to playtest game 2.
I have not reached out to anyone yet, actually.
Okay. But is that your play?
If someone's listening to this and they're like, hey, I like State and I want to play test game too,
Yeah.
feel free to reach out.
So I think because you're currently in Oregon, you're going down to California next. PAX is in Philadelphia. This is a big country. Springfield is on the way.
You're in Spring. There's a lot of springs.
Springfield, Illinois.
Illinois. Yeah, so we do have plans to come up through Chicago.
Yep, you've gone too far north. You've gone too far north.
But we've got to travel north to make that trip because we're starting from Southern California.
So the road from St. Louis to Chicago, I'm in the middle. Where I have 4 playtesters for you.
Interesting.
Because all 4 of them play tested Estate, and where we discovered that there was not enough wheat in the game.
Oh my gosh, that was also a tough nightmare in terms of because we again going back to that component issue. So we had added the tiles into the punch board. And then we were like, oh, there's space on the punch board. If we're short resources, we can add a few more. And it got to the point where we were like finagling because there's the big castle tower.
Yep.
And we were able to like cut down the amount of bleed we had on the castle tower. And that made just enough space for like 10 more resources. So,
oh yeah, wheat was in high demand in that game, and it was just like, oh my gosh, we don't have enough wheat.
You got to make some bread somehow, you know.
You do. You've got to feed everyone, so that's exciting. So it's interesting that you are. So are you going? You're going backwards. Game 2 is going to be the war that predates a state.
Yes.
It's not the factions during a state who they built their states and they're warring against each other. This is the war that they are rebuilding from.
Yeah. So there will be a little bit more, I would say a little bit more takedown than game 1. So
Yep.
game 1 was a little bit more multiplayer solitaire, a little bit of interactivity, like, oh, you did something, I get a slight benefit. But not much. A tiny bit of take that. You know, you had a thief in there.
You did. You did.
But there's going to be I think a lot more card turnover in game 2. And I'm very curious to see how it plays in higher player count games. Where you're probably going to be cycling your deck a little bit more. And that's also a big question of card distribution in the factions that we're doing and how big the deck is. Because I don't want to run into the same problem and end up with like a 60 card deck per faction. And right now, I feel like I'm headed that way. But, you know, you start big and then you kind of scale back.
Right. You've got plenty of time. You're early in the design. How do you... Okay, that's interesting because problem number 1, too many cards. So you've gone through this design sprint process. You know, obviously you're not finished. How do you keep from, as a designer, generally speaking, how do you keep from not repeating the same mistakes?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that goes into, like, there's so many mistakes that get made.
Sure.
And like, that's like our biggest thing is like, we want to spend more time retroing, just like reviewing what we did, like even from like a Kickstarter perspective.
Yeah.
I would love to sit down with our partners and do like a deep dive. And we still haven't done that because it's just like there's no time in the world to schedule across all of us when you're across 4 time zones.
Right.
But that idea of doing like deep retros and staying accountable to what changes you want to make, and we do that. But we do a retrospective weekly where it's just between Pastor and I. But on our Kickstarter front, so that's a good example where we had a number of partners that we worked with. So we had a small marketing agency that was running, I think we were doing like $500 worth of ads a month or something. We had an artist who was kind enough to do a bunch of social media posts for us where they were sharing the art that they did for the game and sort of linking that up to just basic collaborative posts on Instagram for us. But what was effective, what went well with that, we haven't had the time to sit down on that and retro on the Kickstarter side. But on the game design side, we do have I think a fair amount of time where we're sitting down almost weekly to review like this is the steps that we took, and we ended up from point A to point B by the end of this week. And sometimes you're taking 2 steps back because you're like, maybe we actually need to go back to this. So going back to the massive deck issue, that's a perfect example of that, where I've designed these sort of 2 initial factions and have a set of cards, but I'm finding it's heavily weighted on like standard cards right now. And I haven't designed a lot of unique cards yet. And so if I start adding in more unique cards, the card count for that deck's going to start to balloon.
Right.
And there's going to be a happy medium where I need to cut down on. Right now, I think maybe there's like the Agrarian Lord, for example, is one of the 2 factions that we've designed. He starts with like maybe 6 farms in his deck. I don't know if the Agrarian Lord actually needs 6 farm cards in there. So
yeah,
that's
you could make the farms like produce the output of each farm, increase the output, and reduce the number of cards. Right. So you could do that. So
I'm writing it down.
There you go. There are 3 games that come to mind that suffer from this exact problem. And I want to preface this by saying that these are 3 games that I love. that I think are fantastic. But I'm frustrated every time I play them because of this particular issue of too many cards. And you might be able to guess them, and those of you listening may also know. The first one is Terraforming Mars. I love Terraforming Mars, but that deck is just outrageous. You know, it's like, and you add the expansions and you get more cards, and it's just like it's terrible, especially if you have a corporation in Terraforming Mars that's dependent upon a certain tag, and those tags never come about, right?
You're going to go the animal route and never
Yeah,
see the.
yeah, exactly. Arc Nova is another one. Love Arc Nova. It too, although the Marine Worlds came up with a interesting mechanic to kind of, like whenever that wave icon came out in the market, you would sweep cards in the market so that you would see more cards. It accelerated the cards coming out of the deck a little bit. That was great. Not amazing, but it addressed it. It was a concerted effort. And Everdell is just, that thing is just massive cards, right? In fact, I think if you have the entire collection set, the whole thing now with all the expansions, I don't even think the Evertree holds all the cards anymore. I don't think, which is kind of excessive. Could you imagine your castle not being able to hold all the cards?
Well, a very early iteration of the game may have been true.
Yeah. So those are just three games that just kind of popped to my mind right away. Is like they suffer from that same issue, right? That same problem. And Terraforming Mars does not attempt to overcome it at all. Arc Nova does with an expansion. But then I'm thinking about Kavango by Mazaza Games. Yeah. So it has a lot of cards, but the cards are, I can't remember what they're called, and we just played it the other day. They're kind of like, I guess if you were to mirror how they manage their cards in your game, they would be ages, right? Similar to Seven Wonders. So you would have age 1 cards and then age 2 and age 3. So they would fall away, right? And you could have the same size deck with all the variability that you envision, but the entire deck is not accessible for the whole game because they do that. The further you get, each round, consisting of 10 turns in Kavango. There's like A, B, and C decks of cards, and they get increasingly more expensive. That's not the right word. We're talking about animals and trying to feed them, but yeah, that's a possible way of managing a large inventory of cards in your game. I don't know. You could reach out to Matt and Zara if you wanted to at Mazaza Games. They're very open, and they would be happy to talk to you. They're working on their first expansion for Kavango, which will be hitting Kickstarter soon. So a little plug for them. I know I haven't mentioned them in a long time, so I'm sure they're excited for me to even be talking about them right now. Like, oh yeah, this is great. They're really good people, great designers, and yeah, they would be able to talk you through that too. Those are the games that I can think about with a massive card. Yeah.
I need to pick up a copy of Caballo.
You do?
Noted. And I will say we almost did that for game 1, where we almost broke up the deck and had some of your really more expensive cards. I have a separate deck that maybe you can only start drawing from in round 3, but there are a number of reasons why we didn't do that. Don't need to go into full detail.
I don't know that it would work in a state, though, to be fair.
No, it didn't. It did not work.
I don't think that would work. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways to address that, though, I think.
And that's an example of a solution that did not make it past go on day 3.
See?
Bringing it back.
Bringing it back. I love that. That's really cool. I'm still stuck on the how do you avoid making the same mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So what advice would you have to a game designer, whether they're a first-time designer or a new designer that maybe has one game under their belts, and we're thinking about implementing this design sprint? as a way to get to that playtest prototype quickly, what advice would you have for them?
I would say start with blank paper. I for the first entirety of day one, thinking about the problem was just like a blank sheet. Like I was like, what were the problems I had? I was like, oh, I remember this review and like it really irked me. And then I was like, we did this retrospective about game one, 2 months ago. Let me pull it up. So we have like a database of content that we got just internally for like content management. So we'll record our retros in there. Like, let me pull up that retro where we mentioned this, and then I'll add that to the paper. So I kind of start with a blank slate, but then to your point, that creates the issue of like, well, you might recreate some of the existing plans that you've had. And I'm like trying to think like an elegant piece of advice. And the only thing that I can think of right now is just like, you gotta play test it with as many people and as many of a variety of people as you can. And then there's one, and I don't know if I would call it a problem so much as like a feature of the game. So we worked with one artist for game one, and definitely like that artist injected a very particular style. So it's a medieval fantasy game, and there's some oxen, and I shared this story, and no one's gonna know it, but now that I've shared it, it's gonna be
everyone's gonna see it.
There are no horses. So you will notice there's one horse. None of its legs are showing. So that was actually an interesting point. Like because of the timeline that we had for art, there were certain animals that like our artists had a tough time drawing. Great, beautiful environments, beautiful landscapes, really cool like night. But there were certain like specific things. It's like I'm really struggling with this. Like I just can't get the leg right or like the mane right. We don't need it. That was one of those moments of speed to value where just because of the timeline that we needed to get the art in by like we did 10% of our art up front for the Kickstarter. We did 90% afterwards.
Okay.
To get our timeline commitment to backers, we had to really sprint on that 90%. There's I want to say there's maybe 98 or so art assets in the game. So that they had to do essentially 90 pieces of art, illustrations for us over the course of a 6-month period, which is a lot to ask for and stay creative on.
I'm sitting here trying to think back. There are no horses.
Yes, which that'll probably change for game 2. There will be horses.
You can't go to war in the equivalent of medieval times and not be on horseback. I mean,
who has the stirrups? That's the big question.
Yeah, that's huge. So, Devon,
go
ahead. No, go ahead.
I think biggest piece of advice: playtest as much as you can.
Playtest as
many people as you can, and don't be afraid. Like I said, there's also just this fear, like it's my baby, someone's going to steal my idea. I feel like we're a pretty friendly community of publishers. We want to give you feedback. We don't want to like if another publisher stole a designer's idea, could you imagine the fallout from that?
Ooh, it would be a bloodbath. The content creators, once they get wind, would just annihilate them. Yeah, you definitely, I would not worry about someone stealing your idea. Not in that sense, of course.
But I've heard that. And I'm like, don't worry about that. It's not going to happen.
Nope.
And I've often thought, like, if that did happen, like the evisceration factor, but also too, like that's an amazing form of flattery. If that happened to you, like someone might sign you for another game. Like that's
right. I mean, there it is. There. So, Devon, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I love this. So, tell everyone where they could find you if you weren't so damned mobile, right? So I'm thinking about there might be designers who want to talk to you about this design sprint. I'm thinking we may have listeners who just want to know about the next game, play testers. I'm also thinking about, this is important, I'm thinking about artists. You talked about the possibility of being able to feature multiple artists in the second game. What if there's an artist, a game designer, a playtester out there, and they want to be able to find you or Catherine and try to connect with you either in whatever form? Where can they find you in all of the socials?
Yeah, so we do have an Instagram, Estate Raise the Realm. I think we are going to be transitioning that over to Grod Games, though. So I just want to call out both terms, which it's Grod,
Okay.
Grod games. Personally, if you want to drop me an email, it's my first name, Devon, which is Devon, so spelled Devon, at grodgames.com. Always happy to chat. And then if you're looking to find a copy of the game, grodgames.com. We are in pre-sales, but won't be delivering until Q1. And then otherwise, if you're looking to meet up in person, we meet all sorts of conventions, but
All
there's sort of
sorts.
three that I love: Origins, Tax Unplugged, and now I'm adding it to Gen Con.
He's adding it. That's it. Done.
It's in the queue. It's in the roster.
Those are the three. Those are the big three. PAX U, Gen Con, and Origins, I think, hands down, are the big three in the U.S.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the U.S. Yeah, so guys, reach out. Also, on a personal note, don't be surprised if you're actually talking to Catherine.
We do swap, and you may see a change in the tone of voice and be like, am I talking to the same person?
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, so it's like when scheduling for this podcast, it's like I'm dealing with Catherine, and it's like, but you're coming on, and I'm like, okay, so what date and what time, and what's the top? What are we talking about? Well, Devon will be on at this time, and he wants to talk about this. Like, why won't he email me and tell me himself?
I just want to talk about game design, but also,
I get
so
it.
full disclosure, yeah, Catherine is full time on the board game
Yeah,
and she's creating so much leverage for us, which is fantastic.
yeah, yes.
And I get about, if I'm lucky, 10 hours a week.
Okay.
So my time is very sacred right now, and especially trying to put it towards game design.
Sure.
She's lifting all the heavy weight in a lot of other areas for us to help maintain that.
Yeah. Well, thank God for Catherine, right?
Yes.
So once again, thanks for joining. I want to be respectful of your time. Guys, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. We are still doing our very first giveaway. We got a 6th edition copy of Catan from Catan Studios. That's celebrating their 30th anniversary this year, so that's big news for them. The drawing ends at the end of September, and the first week of October sometimes is when I'll pull that lucky name. So if you subscribe, you get 5 entries. If you like on Instagram and post and do all the cool things. So check us out. I just started a TikTok account for the podcast. Late to the game there, but check us out. Yes. So thanks again, and be kind to each other, and let's play more games.